Hello everyone, my name is Daria and I'm a developer relations engineer at Subsquid, and today we're going to review different ways to save data while indexing with Squid SDK. So first, let's initialize the project. We're going to type sqd init and then name of the project. So let's do store demo -- template EVM. So this is going to create our default project. And let's open it. So I already did it. I'm going to open my default project. And as you can see, it uses a Typeform database, which is Postgres, as a default storage option. So if we look at our folder structure, we can see that we have a schema, where in this case we're indexing burns, and we have ID, block, address, value, and transaction hash, and we have the corresponding types. So the default way to save the data would be to decode the transaction. In this case, it's a burn transaction. Then we get the ID, the block number, the address, value, and hash, and we insert it into our database as a batch. But this is not the only way to store data with Subsquid. So next, let's look at how we can use an S3 bucket to save the same data and what are the differences. So here I have an implementation of the S3 storage. In this case, first, we want to create a table, and it's going to be named burns table. We do the same thing where we define our columns, and each column has a corresponding type. In this case, ID is also going to be a string, a block is going to be an integer, address is going to be a string, value is going to be an integer, and hash is also a string. We also define the compression, and most importantly, we set our S3 destination. So we want to use our bucket name, region, endpoint URL that you can find in your Cloudflare or S3 account, and the secret credentials. After that, we follow essentially the same framework, except for we don't have a burn type. So we just create an ID, block, address, value, and hash, and then we save it as an object into our burns array, and then we again batch insert it into our table. A second way to store data on the cloud is BigQuery, and it looks very similar. So let's go into this implementation. We also create a new database. We say that we want to use BigQuery. Then we put the name of our dataset, and again define the table just like we did for S3, except for the types are somewhat different. So in the case of S3, we used 64-bit integer, and here we have a big numeric type. And in the processor.run, we follow the same framework, where we have an array of burns, we decode the transaction data, save it as an object into our array, and then insert many into our table. So instead of calling write many method, we call insert many method, and that is all the difference between S3 and BigQuery interface. And finally, there is also a way to save data locally. So in this case, let's look over how we can store our parquet locally. It looks exactly the same as S3, except for in the destination, we define the folder that we want to use to save the data. So now let's see how it works. To test BigQuery or S3, we need a Google Cloud or Amazon account. So I'm going to show you how to run the normal squid and the local storage squid. So in the case of Postgres, we just do the usual sqd build, then sqd up, then we generate the migration, and call sqd process. And now we can see that the processing is going and we're saving the data into the PostgreSQL. So let's stop this and now test saving to the data folder locally. So we're going to SQD down to shut down the Docker service. And then let's rename this to main-postgres. And this is going to be our normal name. To start it up, we again do SQD up. And in this case, since we're not using Postgres, we don't need to generate the migration, so we just run SQD process. And we can see that the folder data appeared in our file tree. And here we see the status, which keeps track of the indexed information. And if we look at our table, we can see that the chunk size is 10 megabytes. So when we process 10 megabytes of data, we're going to have the first Parquet file in the data folder. So now after waiting a bit, we can see that we have our first Parquet file in the data folder, and as processing goes further, we're going to get more processed information and more Parquet files. So this is it for the overview of different storage options that we have in the Subsquid SDK. And it is also possible to implement your own custom storage. And you can find the interface for that in the documentation, which will be linked below. And this folder is linked below as well for you to try yourself. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments for this video.